Um, let's talk work, jobs. But before we do, would you like to? I got to see an Instagram post of yours that you put up, I think in 2019, and I think it was related to you after you graduated from Oxford, difficulties in you getting a job or something. Would you want to read that to the audience before we continue?
Yeah. So I'll just give a bit of a context of where this comes from, and then I'll
Please
read the
do.
post.
Yeah.
I posted this in December 2019, and this was just after I had graduated from or finished my program in Oxford in June. So I had started to apply for jobs since June and continued hearing a lot of, no's. So people would invite me to an interview, I wouldn't get the job, or they wouldn't respond to my application. And I was feeling very, very discouraged because, to be honest, I'm the type of person who I wouldn't say it was luck because I did work really hard for it, but I've always been able to accomplish what I set my mind to. So
Hmm.
for me to be in a position where I was trying so hard to get a job and I was being rejected left and right was very, very demoralizing on my spirit. I felt like, I was incompetent. I felt like I would never get the job that I wanted, that, maybe I was thinking too high of or overvaluing my Oxford experience, and that's not what people wanted.
Hmm.
So I took this time to really just spend time with God, and I was watching a ministry series by Pastor Mike Todd called Crazy Faith.
Hmm.
And so I'll read the post. And it says, I often post about my accomplishments, but today I felt led to post about my season of rest. After graduating from Oxford, I expected the best position at the best job with the best salary. But the more I applied, the more I was hit with reality. I'm a young Black woman, and most people underestimate my potential. I applied for everything, even waitressing jobs, and I wasn't hired. My dad told me that he sent out hundreds of applications before finding his position, and that terrified me. I'm a 22-year-old woman with a master's degree from Oxford, and that means nothing to anyone. Today, I decided to surrender it to God and manifest the most out of it. I wrote this note down with specific things that I wanted from my dream job: flexibility, the ability to travel, a good salary, and a team of people who believed in me. Oprah said, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and I'm prepared. I've been preparing for this my whole life. Not even 1 hour after I wrote this note, I got a call that I got hired for a position that I was competing for. Flexibility, travel included, and a dedicated team of people who believed in me from the moment they read my CV. Some call it manifesting, I call it God. And the note that I had written said, God has placed my name in rooms my feet haven't entered. I will get my dream job with a salary worth my intellectual, physical, and emotional labor.
It happened. I
And
thought that was so powerful. I just had to ask you to read it up because yeah, it's challenges come. There no matter where you are in life. In fact, sometimes the higher you go, the bigger the challenges. And you were in that season at the time, and it was just like, yeah. Thanks for writing that. It, even reading it now, it kind of touched me. So
thank you.
yeah. Um, so the job that you got after that was posted. That's not your current job, but would you want to talk about that position?
The
The
previous
previous, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so the previous position, I was working for a nonprofit based in Montreal. So Montreal is a city in the province of Quebec in Canada, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently based in Winnipeg, which is a city in the province of Manitoba. And it's about like a 3, 4 hour flight between, but many, many hours drive. So I got a job as a project coordinator for a youth program that encourages youth to be involved in Canada's democracy, that encourages them to be community leaders, to get project management skills. So I was the coordinator of that program. And I was just so excited because, like I said, when I did my interview, I felt comfortable. And even after, when they hired me, they were like, we knew we wanted you from the moment we read your CV, but the way that you presented yourself in the interview, we knew from that moment that like you were the right person. So not only was I getting a job that gave me what I wanted, like the flexibility, I was able to work from home, and they had really good benefits. And then I was also able to travel. So I was going back and forth between Montreal and Winnipeg, and working with a really incredible team of people.
That's awesome. But you mentioned to me earlier, when we were speaking before we started here, that you just started a new job.
Yeah.
How is that going? What's the position, by the way?
So right now I work on the parliamentary affairs team for the Minister of Women and Gender Equality. So I work with the federal government.
And that's in Winnipeg now.
So I'm based in Winnipeg now because of the pandemic, but
Okay.
I'll be moving to Ottawa, which is the capital city of Canada. And this is actually the job, if I could say that I ever wanted a dream job, this would be it. And it goes back to a couple of years back in 2018. Canada was celebrating 100 years since women got the vote. On a side note, 100 years since women got the vote did not equal Black women getting the vote or Indigenous women getting the vote. But nonetheless, they were celebrating 100 years since women got the vote. So to commemorate this year, they put together a program where they invited 338 women from across Canada and paid for their flights and accommodation to go to Ottawa, the capital city, for a couple of days to, network, go to different events, meet the Prime Minister, meet different politicians. And then we took a seat in the House of Commons. So while we were there, we had one speaker who spoke about her journey. She was an Afghan-Canadian minister at the time. And the way that she spoke, I was like, this woman is incredible because, we don't always have ministers who are immigrants. There are a small percentage of politicians who have that experience as someone who came to Canada and worked hard, saw their parents work hard, and then were elected into office and can make an impact for immigrants and other Canadians as well. So I was really inspired by her story because I could see myself in the story that she told. I remember I took a picture with her and I was like, that's incredible. And after that, I went back to Ottawa to do an internship, and my mentor was asking me like, okay, so what are your plans for the future? What kind of a job do you want? And I was like, I don't know, like I really like politics, but I don't know if I really fully align with any political party, but I do believe in people and I believe in values. And he was like, okay, so like, who do you believe in? Whose values do you align with? And I said, that woman. And so now fast forward, couple years later, I graduate from my master's. I've been in this past job for a while. I saw a job position opening for the office of that same woman. And now she's the person that I work for. So I work for the Minister of Women and Gender Equality. And she's the same person who I saw 4 years back at that conference. And then I mentioned her name at the conversation I was having with my mentor. And now I work for her on her team. And I'm just like, the way that God moves
is so awesome. That is so awesome. Wow. She's got her dream job, people. Like, she went to Oxford and she has a dream job. And how old are you again? 24?
24.
Okay. Wow. All right. Now, we've talked academics and jobs. You would think that, we're at the top of the iceberg here, but no, let's talk acting. So you are, I'm laughing or smiling, or I'm not sure what I'm doing. I just think it's amazing. I just think it's awesome. A young person like you, a young black woman with such ambitions and such achievements, and you know, that's one of the reasons why I burn for this. For this purpose, for this podcast, and I don't know where it's going, but I just know that stories like this, like these, need to get out there. And I'm sure it's out there some way, somehow, but you know, it doesn't hurt with another platform to try to help other people understand your story, the stories of other people, and give them encouragement, give them motivation of, I can do that too. If she could do it, I can do it. I mean, I look forward to years from now when my daughter is grown enough to watch this. Really,
It's hot.
yeah, yeah. So you are listed on IMDb's website with 4 credits. That doesn't include a documentary, so actually 5. Starting with the Netflix series, The Pinkertons. Is that right? That's only for the USA people. So US and Canada, not Europe. And in 2019, another series called Killer in Plain Sight. And also 2 movies, I Am Somebody's Child and Escaping the Madhouse. How in the world did you get into acting?
So my acting past is kind of interesting because I've always, like I said, I've been a child who was very vocal. I was very articulate from a young age, and people started to notice that, and they were like, this girl is going places. And so a couple from my church actually offered to pay for my acting classes just out of nowhere. I think they just saw how engaged I was and the potential that I had. And it was something that I had always loved. So they paid for my first acting classes, and I did theater for a couple of years in elementary school. And then I always saw myself going into more film because I just had a love for storytelling. I loved the way that you could take the attention of an audience and tell them a story that will touch them, that will impact them, and that will keep them thinking even after they leave the cinema, after they close the TV, turn it off. So I was super, super drawn to the art of storytelling. So I got into acting, and then after doing theater, I transitioned and wanted to do more film. So I just put my name out there. I was really young, and I remember I would sign into my parents' email address, and I went on Actra to Google all of the casting director and acting agent names in Canada or in Vancouver at the time. And I remember writing them, "Hi, my name is," I gave my mom's name. "My daughter is 12 years old. She's really into acting, and she would love it if you could represent her as an agent." And then I would put my picture in it, and I'd send the email. Every single one who responded to me said no. So I was like, okay, that didn't work. I guess I'll have to try again. So at first, I would go and do background, extra work for movies. And after doing that a few times, the casting directors knew of me and my family. And then I took some more film-focused acting classes. And then I kept auditioning for movies. And then the first one that I got was the Pinkerton story. And that one was really interesting because I was playing a woman who had just been freed from slavery in the United States in the late 1800s. So that was a really interesting thing because when you do a movie, you obviously have to do a lot of research about it. So I got to learn a lot about, what was an African-American woman like during that time. How did she think? How did she talk? How did she walk? So that was really, really cool. And then from there, I kept auditioning. I got a couple roles here and there, and that's how it took off.
Wow, that's amazing. The movie I Am Somebody's Child. I wasn't able to watch it. At least I read about it and saw the trailer. What how did you get, how did you land that role?
Yeah, so that one was a really, really powerful story. I remember I went to the audition. I think I was like, I have a little sister, and at the time she was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I didn't have anyone to take care of her because my parents were at work, and I had an audition to go to. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna take her to the audition. So she kind of just sat in the corner, smiling and giggling while I was doing my acting thing. And I remember leaving there like, oh, they're not gonna choose me. I look so unprofessional. I brought a kid to the audition. Like, there's no way they're gonna pick me. So then I went. And that was the same summer where I said I had taken an internship in Ottawa to work in politics.
Mm-hmm.
And like right then, while I was at work, I got a call and they're like, hey, so we want to choose you for the role. This is when we'll need you to be available. Are you going to be able to be in Winnipeg? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally in Ottawa right now. I'm in the middle of an internship. Like, how am I going to make this work? Luckily, I was able to talk to my supervisor and boss. They gave me time off. So I flew back to Winnipeg, shot the movie, and then flew back to Ottawa to finish my internship. It was a crazy summer. But basically, this story was about an African American woman. Her name is Regina Louise, who had a very, very troubling childhood. She grew up in a home where her father wasn't present, and her mother had a revolving door of boyfriends around who didn't treat her with love. And then finally, she was abandoned, and she went to a foster shelter for children who are in transition. And then she went to so many, I don't even remember the exact number, but I think it was over 20 different foster homes. And her story at the foster shelter, she met a woman who fell into a good relationship with her and eventually wanted to adopt her. But at the time, a white woman couldn't adopt a Black child because they were going through like desegregation laws and things were complicated. Mm-hmm. But her story kind of set like a court precedent. And it was just so, so powerful to be part of a movie that told that beautiful of a story. And she actually came to visit us on set. I got to meet her. We got to spend time with her. Wow. Wow. And it actually inspired me to like, who's writing our stories, like we need people who are writing our stories, people who are producing our stories, because I feel like every immigrant, like what you're doing with your podcast, they have a story to share. They have a place where they come from. They have battles that they've overcome. And those are stories worth telling.
Yeah, definitely. Do you see yourself, do you have any ambitions of maybe sometime going into the film industry? Either writing or continuing acting?
I wanted to for a long time. It was like my biggest dream. I wanted to do acting for the rest of my life and win an Oscar award someday. Mm-hmm. I think right now I'm at a point where reality's kind of hit me, but I'm still hopeful that I can do both. Yeah. So I am still working in politics, advancing human rights through that area, but I'm still very, very close to the storytelling that I can do with acting. So if there was a way for me to do both, I would never let go of acting because that was my first dream.
Oh, everything's possible.
For now, I'm putting it on pause.
Everything's possible. So question, did you ever get to use your martial arts skills in any of your roles?
I wish. I always wanted to do like some kind of cool spy.
And I'm not joking. She has a black belt.
Yeah, like, I wish, but no, I haven't used my martial arts skills in a way yet.
Well, you still have time.
That's
lots
true,
of time. Yeah. We can't move forward if we don't touch on activism. You're an activist. You of course work in politics now, and assuming that role. But there are some interesting projects you've had in the past relating to. I think I read something about you serving some kind of internship at the UN in New York, or was it a summer?
Yeah, I did a summer program at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
What year was that?
That was in 2017.
Okay. Any other projects that stands out that you want to mention?
I would say when it comes to like activism, advocacy, first of all, the way that I see it, because there's a lot of reluctance in people identifying as an activist because they think that you have to be like on the streets leading protests to call yourself an activist. But for me, like I see it more in a holistic sense. I think that everyone can do activism, everyone can be an advocate, and the movement actually needs people who do all things, not just on the streets, but we need people who are teachers, people who are healers, people who are artists and creatives, and every different skill set is needed in the movement. And I guess for me, I started it at a young age. Like I said, I grew up in a family that was very, very intentional with teaching me about where I come from, what our story was of the Congo. So my dad was always very involved. He was the president of the Congolese community of Manitoba back in 2008, I think. So through his involvements, I would go to different protests, I would go to different community events and barbecues, and that really set a standard for me to understand that like I'm not living for me, I'm living for my community. So as I grew up, I continued being involved. So I was the closing speaker when we did the Women's March here in Winnipeg, and this was just after President Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, was elected. There was like thousands of women's marches that happened across the world. So the one here in Winnipeg, they called me up to give the closing speech. And I talked about how like this march was actually inspired by the March on Washington that was led by Martin Luther King Jr. So it wasn't women necessarily, it was Black people. This was an act of the civil rights era for rights for Black people. So to be able to stand in that space and speak of that history was really, really unique for me. And I've continued to do it as much as I can in whatever space I'm in.
Awesome. Awesome. We are going to wrap this up pretty soon, but I have a couple of questions that are standard questions for all the guests on the show. So I'm just going to run through it real quick. What are some of the day-to-day challenges you face that's directly related to you being an African or Black woman living in Canada?
I would say right now, one of the biggest day-to-day challenges that I'm facing is knowing what my role is and what I can do to support people back home. So just this past week, in my country, there was a volcano eruption in Goma, which is a city on the eastern side. And many, many people lost homes. Many, many people had to be displaced. And Congo, actually, I was looking it up. We have the largest population of displaced Africans on the African continent.
Really?
So the issue of displacement is very real and affecting many people. And I'm really grateful that, you know, my family was given a second chance to be able to restart a new life in Canada. But one of the biggest challenges is like, what do I do for the people who didn't get that opportunity? And how can I make use of what I have here to support what's happening back there?
Wow.
And you were saying, like, I remember you were saying the intention is not only to do things back there, but also in Canada. So to add to that, making sure that I live a life that is worth what we went through to be here, in the sense that I can't be average. I can't afford to be average. And I guess you kind of see that in my story, and in the things that I've done. But I'm really, really trying to be able to not be the first at accomplishing things, but to make sure that I'm not the last. Right. And I was lucky to have been raised in a home with two parents and a very supportive community. And I want to make sure that I can offer mentorship to young women who are growing up and need that same sense of support, direction, and love.
Yeah.
Young women and men.
Thank you. On the flip side, I would want to ask about the privileges, what we actually have talked about it in a way, but privileges that you have as an African living in the diaspora in Canada. Like we mentioned something about it, and it's pretty obvious, but you could just quickly say something on that. Because I'm trying to balance it off here, challenges, as an African, but we also have lots of privilege, in my opinion. We have a lot to be grateful for. So
Yeah. So the conversation of privilege is sometimes a little bit hard because we have some people who are always like, get rid of your victim mindset. I don't actually see it as that. I see it as acknowledging the fact that, you came from a complex situation. And for those of us who came from a context of war, it wasn't just a fight between our countries. Like there are larger global systems that come at play. We come from a continent that was colonized, and that history does impact the current political context that we see today.
yeah.
Yes, part of that is the fault of the corruption that some of our people continue to produce, but part of that is also because we were offered a hand that was meant to fail. So, given that, I would say as an immigrant who has had the opportunity to live in Canada, I'm extremely privileged to have rights that are protected by the country, to have an opportunity to work and move forward. Yes, there are barriers, there are obstacles, but at least I'm afforded that opportunity to do that. I can go and get an education. I can improve myself and develop myself, and then hopefully affect and impact the community that I serve. I think one of the things that we need to remember as Africans who are in that positions of privilege, that it's not your fight alone. I think we're, especially the Congolese community, sometimes we're not really united. And I would love to see more of that unity.
Wonderful. Okay, the next one is your worst experience as a Black woman living in Canada, or just outside of the continent. Is there one experience that you remember that stands out among others?
I don't know if I can like point to one experience, but I think my experience is created by multiple different small experiences. I think the biggest thing is racism, the reality of racism, and how easy it is for Canadians, for Americans, for Europeans to deny their part in it. And not only are we experiencing racism, but on top of that, as I said, coming from a Congolese country that was previously colonized, that's a whole other political context that it's like yeah, there are many things that come with education and knowledge. But one of the things that I faced after graduating from Oxford is just like the challenge and the fear of knowing like all of this happened to us and we haven't had justice. We are still being killed by police. We are still seeing civil wars in our country. There's immense poverty, rape and abuse. And why aren't people doing things about it? So I think just seeing all of that and being aware of the reason why some people are silent about it is because it protects their interests. Congo, for example, is a very resource-rich country. It supports a lot of industries that are making a lot of money on this side of the country. So for them to be involved in the human rights abuses would make a problem for their profit. So knowing that there are two stories to everything that we hear, it's kind of heartbreaking.
Got that. If we flip that around, the most memorable act of kindness, I kind of have a feeling that from your story, I don't know what you would say, but still want to ask. The most memorable act of kindness you've experienced. I mean,
The most memorable act of kindness. There's so many. But I'll say one that definitely hit me. As I said, after I did my internship, I had a conversation with my mentor. And prior to that, I hadn't really had good experiences. Whenever I was paired in a mentor program, I would have a mentor who would show up for a couple times and then kind of dip out. But this person, he was Caribbean, and he was so invested in, making sure that I was supported. I had someone to ask questions if I needed. He was invested in making sure that I could build my career. And I remember at the end of the interview, like I sent him an email to say thank you for being such a big support for me while I was in Ottawa. And he said, like, always remember to lift while you climb. And that's a quote that's like has stayed to my heart. And I hope that wherever I go, in whatever space I'm in, I hope that I'm not the only Black African woman there, that I'm lifting while I'm climbing. I don't want to be the first to accomplish things. I want to make sure that I'm not the last.
I love that. I love that answer. All right. 3 words or phrases that would sum up your experiences so far. Growing up, going to school, Oxford, your present job. 3 words or phrases.
Resilience, rooted, and Ubuntu. And for those who don't know what Ubuntu means, it's a Zulu word that means I am because you are because we are. So that doesn't just mean that I'm in this by myself, but I am in this with my community, with my creator, and that sums up my whole experience.
Beautiful. All right. Wow. Oh yeah, one last thing. What impact has COVID had on your life this period of time with the pandemic? I know that it's done something for everybody. It might be negative, positive, but something. Would you want to just end with that?
Yeah, for sure. On my life personally, I'm somebody who's very active, very involved. And so COVID kind of put me in a situation where we were stuck at home, and I wasn't able to do all of the different commitments that I do. And it put me in a position where I really, really had to realize, like, am I doing this because it's needed, or am I actually seeing success and work as a coping mechanism? And that for me was a very, very tough thing to come to terms with, because it's true. Because of the context that I grew up in, seeing my parents work 2 jobs to be where they are, and being the minority in my class and having to prove myself, I grew up with an understanding that, like, I always have to be working, and I have to be working hard. And so I at 24 years old, I've accomplished more than people twice my age have done. And yes, that's good, but the kind of psychological impact that has on your mental health can be challenging. So COVID, the context of COVID made me have to take time to really, like, go and take a step down, say no to things, rest, talk to a therapist, unpack some of the things that I experienced growing up, and heal from them. I'd also say that I've had the privilege to be able to work from home. I haven't gotten sick, and that's unfortunately not the norm.
No.
Black people, immigrant people, people of color here in Canada have been the most impacted by COVID, because they're the most represented in frontline workers at restaurants, in warehouses, where the virus is spreading the most. And unfortunately, because of that, they're the ones in the hospitals, in the ICU beds. And I can't speak about my experience without recognizing that I'm privileged to not be in that position, but the larger community has been hit a lot worse.
Yeah. Oh. Well, thank you for that answer, Joyce. It was amazing. It was an honor having you here. I really enjoyed it. you took my words away a couple of times, but really, really wonderful. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it, and I'm gonna follow up with your progress.
Thank you.
I'm excited. Yeah,
for having me. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right then. Well, that was it, folks, for this time. Until next time.